Heather, I appreciate the opportunity. This is I don't know, probably the second or third time I've done this over the last few years. Generally, it would be in person, but regardless, I think we can accomplish the same here today. As Heather said, feel free. It's going to be a high-level overview, very informal overview of our GIS website, what we have to offer. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. Feel free to put stuff in the chat. I'll be happy to answer questions at the end. Again, I've blocked off some additional time, so if we run long for what y'all have scheduled, that's fine too. But either way, I appreciate you being here, and just a little history about me. I have been with Pender County now total for about 8.5 years. In the GIS and addressing role. I do serve as the GIS manager for the county. So I'm responsible for our GIS website, our enterprise GIS system that a lot of our departments here and employees use, as well as doing mobile applications and other websites and different things. So GIS has certainly expanded here in Pender as it has really everywhere. As far as our website is concerned, the GIS portion of it is the most used web page on our website, and most local governments, that trend is generally the same. Generally, if there's a problem, the first folks we hear from are realtors. We know y'all use it frequently. It is a very integral part of your role wherever you work, as well as many of our departments here at the county. So when it goes down, thankfully, it's not very often, and usually result of some corrupt data from a department, tax department, utilities, somewhere that got uploaded. And in GIS, just to keep it simple, if one thing breaks, it takes down everything, unfortunately. So anyway, regardless, we still generally, our website, we don't have too many issues with it. As always, we do recommend you use Chrome, Firefox, Opera, any of those. It typically works well in. Internet Explorer has always been a pain for most applications. We have noticed that with the new Edge, it does seem to perform all right with Edge. Some folks are limited to Internet Explorer depending on the organization you work for, maybe some applications you use. We have some departments here that use internal applications that only support Internet Explorer. So, you use what you have, but we do recommend Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox above the others. So, one other thing to note just before we really dive into it, for our website, so many of our things populate in a new window. So make sure, a lot of times, y'all can still see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So most time, the quickest way to know if your pop-up blockers are turned on for our website is when you try to print a map or you try to export a CSV or something along that lines. There's generally a message that'll flash up here saying pop-up block. So just make sure for our county, you can do it for our county. You ain't got to turn it off for everything, but just make sure for Pender County that the pop-up blockers are turned off. Because if they're not, you're not going to have, like I say, if you print a map or you try to print a CSV, none of that information is going to come up. Moving on, another thing that we've seen in the past when folks have had some issues is they have our GIS website bookmarked. And that's all well and good, but there has been some instances when we've pushed out updates or something along that lines that those shortcuts no longer work. They may give you issues. They may, if you never delete your cache or anything like that on your computer, a lot of times that can cause some issues. You may see some update, or you may not be able to see some of the updates we push out. So, and I'll show you a pretty quick way to refresh your cache if something's going on. As always, one of the biggest calls we get, I've answered 2 or 3 emails this week, people having problems with the GIS website. Most time clearing your cookies hitting Control F5 at the same time, restarting your PC, that fixes 99.9% of all GIS problems, GIS website problems, or any problem your computer's having. So just always try those things first, and hopefully that takes care of your problems. Anyone have any questions so far? All right, hearing none, I'll move on. I just wanted to go, this is the county homepage for those, again, that may have a bookmark. Just in case you don't know how to get to our website, you can just go to Google and type in Pender County GIS and navigate to it that way. But just in case, up here in this this home bar under online services, you're just going to click on this GIS online maps. And from this page right here, you can do a couple different things. So we typically put news and alerts, you know, new updates up here at the top in red. This is our GIS disclaimer that nobody reads, but it pretty much, it's the same one that pops up when you bring up GIS. But it pretty much just says that GIS cannot be used for legal means. You can't look at our map and say someone's crossing my property line and sue them based off of what we have in GIS. They're pretty solely for record keeping purposes, especially through the tax office, making sure our tax parcels are available for public to view. But that's in general what it's for. Again, I'm the GIS manager. This is my contact information. And last year, I was approved to hire a GIS analyst. His name's Mike. He came to us from Surf City. So some of you may have known him. I think he was in Surf City for 2-3 years, I believe. But either way, in the event that you have a question for us and you can't get up with me, feel free to call Mike. He handles a lot of things, but primarily 911 addressing is one of the main things he handles. Before I actually move down into the maps, over here, we just have a couple, and this may not be relevant to y'all, and that's fine. But addressing, again, you can find a list of road names throughout the county. So we, the county, manages and maintains an approved road name list as well as subdivision list. So not only can you see existing road names throughout the county, you can also see road names that certain subdivisions have reserved. And these are just Excel spreadsheets. Same with county subdivision lists. So we do govern the naming of our streets and stuff. We do have a county ordinance, you know, that we follow and enforce when it comes to addressing and road name. Again, it's probably not relevant to you all, but I did want to show you. Also, if anyone wants GIS data, you know, there are some real estate companies that actually use the actual desktop software within their offices for different things. We do sell the county's data. A lot of it can be found online for free. You know, we print maps for folks all the time. Again, there's fees for all of that, but all of that can be found in this fee schedule right here. But anytime you got any questions, a data request or map request, there's just something you need done, you know, just reach out to me and Mike, and we'd be happy to assist. I'll go back to that main GIS page. Any questions before I move down into the maps? All right, very good. So down here, this list, and unfortunately, every local government or municipality website that you go to, their GIS looks a little bit different. You know, they may offer only one map, or they may offer a bunch of different maps, different formats, different vendors. But we've stuck with the same template, the same company for ever since I've been here and beyond that. And we've been fairly pleased, you know, how easy ours seems to be, fairly easy to navigate and stuff compared to others. But we have updated a couple times, and we'll probably have some more updates coming soon. We're doing some upgrades to our servers internally, you know, that haven't been done in 3 or 4 years. So there may be some changes coming in the next few months, but overall, you're not going to see much change as far as how the website looks and how it functions. The main one we're going to be going over today is this general parcel search. This is the one that most folks have bookmarked, or they have a shortcut to it on their desktop. This is the one that most everybody uses. It has pretty much most of our layers that are requested, the most function of all our other web pages. You know, it's internally hosted, along with the development activity. Some of these other ones, as me and Mike have started using ArcGIS Online, putting stuff up in the cloud, we've started making some more focused maps that doesn't have, you know, 30 layers in it and a bunch of buttons that no one knows how to use or wants to use. So that's what these other ones are. The titles are pretty self-explanatory. You know, commissioner's district, you can type in your address and see which one of your commissioner, who your commissioner is. Government offices, that's just a map of all our government offices along with the contact information. Parks and public places. This one I will take a minute to show it to you because we just launched it. Mike worked quite a bit on that one. Where do I vote? That was one we pushed out before this past election, that you could find out what voting jurisdiction you were in, where you could go to vote, that sort of stuff. And then finally, Pender County Commerce Park down on 421. Just an informational showing you what lots are available, who the tenants are, you know, that sort of stuff, as well as some external links to Wilmington Business Association and such. But we've had a lot of folks really like this story map that's coming up. You know, it's really no frills, and you know, there's nothing super fancy about it. But our tourism department, some other ones, have really enjoyed showing these to folks. But we wanted a one-stop shop for park and public places, stuff for visitors to do, stuff for residents to do. And this kind of has all of it in one. Again, you know, we update it all the time as new stuff comes on board, and you know, we acquire new property or, you know, things like that. But here you can click on each one of these. Again, there's a little write-up and generally a link to a web page for whatever you're looking at. But parks, game lands, trails, tourism info, like I say, it's pretty self-explanatory. But everybody has really enjoyed that so far. You know, so if there's someone wanting to know in Surf City what all is there to do, you know, you can send them to this map. This information is not on our main GIS website. I mean, you can search for certain things like this, but having it all kind of a one-stop shop for tourism and stuff like that, that's what this serves the purpose for. And I just closed out my maps. Give me 1 second. While this is coming back up, any questions so far?
You're good so far.
Say that again.
Good so far.
Okay, very good. Appreciate it. All right, so just before I go to this general parcel search, I will say that this development activity, I created this one for our planning department several years ago. Unfortunately, due to turnover and stuff down there, it went kind of by the wayside for quite some time, but they've got quite a bit of staff in there now. So they are back to updating it. As far as I know, under this layers, it looks like a regular website with some of the same tools, but it just doesn't have all the data that our regular website does. But you can see over here, a lot of the cases, major subdivisions, new ones, you know, ones that have applied for variances, ones that have applied for rezonings. That's what this map is for. So it may be useful for y'all as well when you're looking for new subdivisions. And a lot of planning stuff, I think they actually refer to this website, or they'll provide links to it. But again, they're supposed to be uploading documents. And let me see if I can find one just to show you real quick before we move to that. No features now. Yeah, so it looks like some of these, they haven't put the information in there. It looks like pretty much everything I click on. So anyway, they're supposed to be starting back to updating it again. They've had, and some of you may be aware, but over the last 2-3 years, a lot of turnover. But anyway, that's the purpose of this website. Again, you can get to it on planning's website. They have a lot of this information in tabular form. And this was just a geographical representation so people could see kind of where the development and stuff was at. Any questions about that one before I move to the main? All right. All right, so we're going to start with the main one. I'm sure some of you have already been using it. You know, y'all probably use it more than I do. I'll admit, I never go on our GIS website for the most part. The only time I'm on it is generally when something's broke. And I literally usually know within seconds. We have a lady at the tax office. We have, like I say, probably 20-30 employees that rely on it, you know, customer after customer. And between the realtors and the folks at the tax office, I usually know within seconds when something goes down. They've got me on speed dial, which is fine. The sooner we know about it, the sooner we can get it fixed. But anyway, this is our main GIS website. And as far as the map window is concerned, this right here, there's just a few things on it that I'll go over. We've got our basic tools up here at the top. We've got some links. Again, if you have pop-up blockers turned on, when you click this help, you notice it'll open in a separate window, but if you have it turned on, that window won't open and you might think that something's just wrong. But there is a help window that didn't work for a long time, but it is back up and working. I got it fixed a few weeks ago. It kind of walks you through some of the same stuff we'll be talking about today. It doesn't have everything on it, but in general, if you got any questions, you can't get up with me, you can't get up with Mike, you can always refer to this document. There's also a link back to the county homepage. Mobile, I don't really know why mobile's up here, but our website is mobile capable. I will say it's not as user friendly as the desktop version, but you can use our website on your cell phone or a tablet. But it's going to look quite a bit different from this. But anyway, we'll go over the tools and then as far as your table of contents, there's quite a bit of information over here that we'll go over as well. But we'll start with the easy one, just a map window. For the most part, zooming in, I've got a wheel on my mouse that I scroll in and out with, and that's how I zoom a lot of times. But right here, just a couple buttons in this map window. We have a home button. So when you zoom in somewhere, if you just want to go back quickly to the whole county view, you can just hit that home button and that's going to take you out to where you can see the region. And then as far as the manual zoom in, and there's like 3 different ways to zoom in on the website, but you can just click this to zoom in, click that to zoom out. So minus zoom out plus zoom in. One thing I do want to mention now that I've seen this, we have a lot of questions like, what are all these dots on this map? So working with our library and historical folks, they wanted folks to be able to see cemeteries by default. And the county used to have an old website that had these cemeteries on it. And some of you may have seen, there's been some news headlines as of recent on cemeteries, specifically in the Hampstead area. But anyway, this layer, all of these green dots, the green, the orange or yellow, and red represent cemeteries. Now the color of them, back in the day, there was a project where some folks were going out and field verifying, and when they would verify it out in the field, they would change the status to yes, or we're not sure what the workflow was. It was done probably 15 years ago or so. But either way, they wanted to keep the symbology and stuff the same. So that's exactly what we did. So they are on by default, as are a lot of layers. And we'll go over that in some more detail once we get over here, because they can become kind of annoying. but you can turn them off, and I'll show you that in a little bit. The next thing here in the window down here in the bottom right, it doesn't come up by default just so it's not blocking you. But if you do want to see where you are in relationship to the rest of the county, it will pop up a vicinity map, and this little purple square represents where you're zoomed into on the county. So just, if you have an address and you punch it in and you're not sure where it is, you can hit that button and it'll show you what part of the county you're in. But again, a lot of folks don't even realize it's down there, but that's what it is. The last two things up here is our road map and photography. So what you're looking at right now is our standard road map. All it's got is parcel lines. It's got address points on by default, cemeteries, that sort of stuff. But over here, we can click on photography. And this right here, by default, it turns on our most recent ortho or aerial flight, which was, we just uploaded them, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, but they were actually flown in March of 2020. So the state 911 board, thank goodness, has been funding our orthos in 4-year cycles. So the last time, let's say 2020, 2016, and 2012. So the last 3 times we've received orthophotography, aside from some QC, the state has funded it because they realize the importance of having up-to-date orthophotography. Otherwise, it would be every 8 years before we have, before it gets updated, just because of how expensive it is. But we all know how important it is to have up-to-date photography. Would we like to have, especially in the Hampstead area, have it done every couple of years or once a year? Absolutely, because things are growing and changing so fast. And what a lot of cities have done, like Wilmington, for instance, in between those 4 years, they'll do it. They'll do it every 4 years themselves, but they're actually getting new orthos every 2 years. So that might be something we do eventually, just to handle with the growth. But anyway, you can hit this little drop down and you'll see all of the aerials that we have up here that are available. I can't remember which one it is. All of this is relying on you having a good internet connection, especially when you start dealing with big data sets such as imagery or flood zones. Flood zone is a big file that folks really rely on. And I'm zoomed in too far. Well, for whatever reason, that was not working. But anyway, so just make sure when you're using our website, if you're on a phone or you're on a device and you only have one bar, don't expect it to be, super, super fast. But if you got a good Wi-Fi connection, it should be pretty quick. Here in the office where I am today, it's moving along. If you're hardwired into your network, obviously it's going to work much faster. But anyway, you can just toggle on in between the roadmap photography, or you can change it to a different year if you want to see when a house might have been moved, or when 20 houses and when water was built, what year. You can kind of get a gauge. I mean, you can look at tax information too, but either way, that is our map window. Is there any questions about our map window? All right, here none. I did fail to mention this little arrow right here. You can click it and it'll minimize, so if you need to see a little bit more of the map, you're on a TV or something along that lines, you can make it a little bit wider, getting that window out of the way, or table of contents. So one thing I have had some calls about recently was our orthos were not working. Well, what's happened is because our servers and stuff have not been updated, we've got some updates and stuff coming up. Our transparency feature is no longer working on some of our layers. So what happens by default, our municipal boundaries, and I'll just show you real quick. You can check any of these layers, and anything that you see with a blue check when you first bring up a website is on by default, but you can cut it off. If you will notice, because municipal boundaries and municipal ETJs are both on, you can't see the orthos through it. Again, our transparency feature is not working. So a lot of times folks are like, I'm turning the orthos on, but all I see is a white, a blank page with parcel line. And that's typically why, is because they're inside one of those boundaries. But if you just come up here, and turn boundaries off and then turn municipal ETJs, you'll be able to see the orthos underneath. That is something in the future you won't have to worry about. You'll be able to see through the boundaries, the incorporated areas. And if you still want to turn them completely off, you'll still be able to go to your table of contents and turn them off. But if for some reason you turn on photography and all you see is white or gray, you're probably within an ETJ or an incorporated area. So you'll just have to navigate those boundaries and turn them off. And we'll.
Josh?
Yes, ma'am.
Quick question. Someone had asked, when you zoom in and there are those little house icons, they're different colors. Why are some orange and some blue? And
very good question. So where you can find the information of those at, the different colors means it's a different type of point. So from an addressing standpoint, orange houses like this one, that is going to represent a occupied single family dwelling. If it is a single wide mobile home or a travel trailer camper at Lanier's Campground, it's going to be a blue house. If it's a duplex, it's going to be one color. If it's multifamily like apartments, it's going to be another symbol. If it's a government building, it's going to be this green symbol. So the different colors represent different types of address points. But if you click on one, and again, we'll go over this a little bit more. If you'll notice right here where it says building type, it says house. Well, if you click on a blue one, it's going to have trailer right there. So it's just a quick way. Once you get used to what the symbols mean, I'll try to find you an example. Let's see. Like up here, these green B's stand for businesses. But again, you can click on them. Pretty much everything on the map you can click and identify. So this one is a business, so it has a different symbology. Trying to see if I can find it. Right there's a blue one. So that tells me it's a single wide trailer. And so on and so on. So that's what the different symbology means. Just like for the roads, Highway 17 is a state highway. So it's symbolized with this red color and this particular symbol. Whereas a standard secondary road or private road is just going to be black, with an actual road name typed out. So it's the same thing with the houses. That's why you see the different colors. Does that answer your question?
yeah, I think that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to clear that. All right, I think I'm going to go over these tools up here, but do we have any more questions before I move forward?
Josh, did you say that private roads are indicated by a separate color other than state? No.
I don't think they're a different color. I think they're a different symbology. So I think they're a smaller, let's see, I think it's a thinner line. I don't think it's a different color. I mean, obviously we have the ability to make it whatever color we want to make it. That's a secondary road. They used to be dashed. Again, I don't use the website much. Let me find one that's secondary. I think what it is on the website without pulling the server, yeah, right there's one. So no, it's probably symbolized just the same. It's just a smaller line. They used to be dashed. If that's something folks are interested in and it would help, we could certainly make that change. If you want to look at a road and immediately know, hey, it's private. We can also do custom labels, where it could say Sarah Lane and up under it could say PBT or secondary or something along that lines. But most of the time we just like to change the symbology.
Yes, to know that it's a private maintained versus a public maintained, that's
Right.
a big issue for us.
Right, right. And again, like most things, you can click over here and always check. For the most part, this is up to date. As you know, we have a lot of roads that come through subdivisions, preliminary and finals to have a private or have a secondary road abbreviation to it. However, it's not technically a secondary road until NCDOT accepts it into their inventory. So this is not always 100%. You can always check. DOT has I think it's called Drive-In C, I believe it is, or something along that lines. You can always pull it up on their map as well, just to verify. If you want to double check. But we tried generally. Our regional DOT office will send me a notification when they adopt a portion of a road or something along that lines. If something goes from private to public or public to private, they'll generally send us a map and we'll usually change it that day. But it's not 100%, but for the most part, it should be fairly squared away. But we can certainly look at changing. Like I said, I believe it used to be dashed instead of just being a solid line. I think it's just a smaller line. I think a secondary road's 1.25 and a private is 1. And just looking at it on the map, it's really hard to distinguish. So we can just change it back to dash, just so you can see very quickly. Once you learn what dash means, you'll be able to quickly tell. Any other questions about that before we get started on the tools?
Nothing in the chat.
All right. So again, we'll just go over each one of these tools. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Again, these are just zoom in, zoom out tools. The magnifying glass, you click one time, hold it and drag a square, and wherever you drag a square, that's where it's going to zoom to. If for some reason you move your map or something, and instead of you trying to pan and then get the zoom right and that sort of stuff to go back, these two blue arrows right here, the one to the left to take you back to your previous extent, the one to the right to take you back to where you were. So that's all those two buttons do. Again, zoom out. You can either use the manual or you can use this magnifying glass. The same thing, left click, hold it down and drag a square. The smaller the square, the more to zoom out. The larger the square, the less it zooms out. Again, full extent, this button right here, tool, does the same thing this home button does. Click it, it's going to take you back to the whole region view. Next button, the hand, pretty universal. All it means is to pan. You can pan the map various ways. But like I say, once you zoom in, I typically just hold my left mouse button down and you're able to pan that way too, versus coming up here and activating a new tool. You don't have to do that. I can be in identified mode and still pan the map. So just a little quick tip. I'll skip over the identified tool because there's a little bit of additional information to go over there, as well as the select tool. So pardon me for skipping around those tools. We'll go in a little more depth with them. This right here is Google Street View. Again, this is going to pop up in a new window just to keep someone from having to go to Google, type it in, drag the little man or Google Earth or something along that lines. If there's Google Earth available, you can click this tool, click on the center line, and it's going to pop up in another window. And there's Google Street View. So that's all that tool does. Now, y'all are probably aware, not everywhere has Google Street View. So if you use this tool and you click somewhere that doesn't have it, let's see if this one's got it. Yeah, this one's got it. It'll generally pop up in a window, but it'll say there is no Google Street View available for this area. So you get on the western side, some of the eastern side of the county, And the northern side, all of our secondary and private roads don't have street view. So you'll get that error message, but it's going straight to Google though. But just make sure, again, you've got to have pop-up blockers turned off for our website. The next one is our measuring tool. A lot of folks use this for different reasons. You can measure linear as well as area. And there's two little toggle buttons. By default, you're going to be measuring a line. And all this drop down is you can measure in different things. You can measure in feet, yards, miles, nautical miles. I don't know how much all of this is used, but let's say, for instance, you have someone interested in a house and they want to know, well, how close is it to the nearest school? You can come in here, click on miles. Granted, it can be as the crow flies, or you can click down the center line until you get to where you're going. But all you'll do is just use your mouse, left click one time. If you want to end the measurement, and this is whether you're doing a linear measurement or area, if you double click it, that's going to finish it. But you can come and left click, and then we can go down the road if we want to. And if you'll notice on the top right, it's keeping track of how many miles I'm going. So right now we're at 0.23 miles. So, you know, here's the nearest school. So I can click right there and say, well, you're 0.3 miles from the school. So a lot of people, you know, that's what they use it from. They're wanting to know proximity to something. How close I am to the school? How close am I to a park? You know, something along that lines. Feet, you know, it is fairly accurate. If you zoom in and want to know how big a commercial building is, you can get a rough estimate, you know, using the feet and using the orthophotography. You know, if I wanted to know the rough square footage of this house, if the tax office didn't have that information included in the parcel, you could get a rough estimate based on the exterior. Moving over to what a lot more folks use, I believe, is the area. So again, you can change it to square feet, miles, square miles, acres, that sort of stuff. If you want to know how much cleared land is there, how much wooded land is there, you know, what would it look like if I wanted to cut a 10-acre piece into a 5-acre piece? You know, you can use this measuring tool to kind of draw and figure out your size. And if you notice, it'll keep track of it over here. But again, to finish any measurement, if you double click it, you know, it'll stop. A lot of folks use that again for measuring wooded land, cleared land, wasteland, you know, how much water's on the property, that sort of stuff. But that's our measuring tool. Are there any questions about the measuring tool? All right. Another one that's probably not used too much, but on occasions, people will give you a GPS coordinate. They might give you something they got off their phone, latitude, longitude. This button works both ways. So you can input, any of you that's dealt with longitude, latitude. You know, I'm in GIS and we use it, but it can be very, very finicky sometimes as far as the format in which you enter stuff. You know, if you're missing a minus sign or your dot's in the wrong place, I mean, you can end up way off in space. So anyway, again, it's probably not used that much, but if for some reason someone said, hey, what's the latitude and longitude for this building on this property? You can also, while this button's open, you can click on the map and it's going to give you that information here. DD's decimal degrees, this is degrees, minutes, seconds, and this is a XY, you know, based on our state plane. Again, probably something none of you would use, but just in case, that's what it's for. You can either input stuff and it'll zoom to it, or you can click on a point on the map and it'll give you that information in whatever format you might need. I'll skip over draw. I'll come back to it too. This eraser, that's just a clear button. If you've got a piece of property highlighted that you were looking at over here, or you got multiple pieces highlighted, generally you can either hit clear right here, or you can hit this eraser button and it'll remove that from being selected. And that's all that is. And then lastly is the print button. Again, this one does not work if your pop-up blockers are turned off, because what it's going to do, also, if you don't have a PDF, most of us have Adobe, but if you don't have a software on your computer, it doesn't have to be Adobe. But if you don't have anything on your computer that reads a PDF, this is not going to work. But what it does, it takes what you input here in this window, and in the background, it builds a PDF export of that map and pops it open in a new window. And I'll show you how it works right here in a second. But right here, most folks just use the standard landscape 8.5 by 11 on a regular sheet of paper, but it does give you the options, you know, to change it to different sizes. If you need something a little bit bigger and you've got a printer that'll print bigger, I've actually never tried it, so hopefully that works. And then this last feature is map only. So by default, when you run a map, it's going to have a map on part of the page, and then at the bottom of the page, it's going to have like a truncated tax card. It's going to have the parcel, the owner name, the value, deed information, that sort of stuff. But if you just want to see a map and you want the map to take up pretty much the whole page, just click on this map only. But for this, what I'm showing you today, I'm just going to leave it on the default. You can change the title. If there's a client you're working with, if there's, you know, we'll say service, you know, a PIN number that you want to be up at the top of the page, you can change it there. You can change it to PNG, but by default it's set. And for the best quality, typically PDF's the way to go. The next two things is the entire map extent. So that's going to print pretty much everything you see at no particular scale. If you change the specific map scale, this is unfortunately kind of a waste of time. A lot of folks want a scaled map that they can measure on. You know, print me a inch equals 300 map, and then I'm going to sketch what a 40 by 80 shot would look like on it. Well, the only problem, because of settings like it being crossed across the network, then you print it out on your computer, most likely it's not going to come out to scale. I don't think I've ever seen it work, unfortunately, but the feature's up there. If you figure out a way to do it, good. But if anytime in general someone needs a scale drawing, we actually do it in GIS here in the office, or if we're working remotely. So we have the ability to print out a scaled map, but off the website, you know, it may be close, but it's not going to be exact. But that's all that means right there. By default is the entire map extent. So now all I'm going to do is click export map. It's going to say all this, and then it's going to pop up a new window. If you have pop-up blockers turned off, this will just go away, and you'll see a little message that comes up here and gives you error message. So there's the map. Because I didn't select a parcel, no tax information is up here. So it just shows you a basic map with the scale and the date and the title we put. But if I come back and say 109 Middle Point, that's my subject property. And then I'm just going to take the defaults, hit export map again. This time it'll show the parcel highlighted as well as the tax information at the bottom, or at least it should. There you go. So just depending on what you need. Over here, if I would have chose the print map only, it would have been like that first map. It would have just been a map here, and none of this information down here would have been there. Any questions on the print feature? All right, I'm just going to go back through a couple of these tools I skipped over. The first one being the identify tool. So like I said before, aside from the aerials, pretty much everything in GIS you can click on. So all of these layers over here, for the most part, you can click on and identify. Now, what you'll notice sometime is when you click on something, think of GIS as just a bunch of layers. Think of it as a book. when you click on a certain spot, like I just clicked on that address point, I actually clicked like down through the map to the base map. So if I've got 4 layers on, it's going to identify all 4 layers up under that point. So what you'll notice, a lot of folks is like, I'm clicking on this, but I'm not able to see the parcel information. Well, you'll always notice over here in the table of contents, it'll show you that, hey, there was 2 features found. And the only way you're going to see that layer that's up under it is to click next. If you've got municipal boundaries on, you got flood zones on, you got wetlands on, and you click a point, you're going to have something up here that says showing 4 of 4, 5 of 5, something along that lines. And you use these 2 buttons right here to cycle through it. So that's what that is. But anyway, going back to identify, you can click on roads, you can click on address points, this, that, and other. The only 2 layers that have hyperlinks associated with them are the address points and the parcels. And hyperlinks are these blue lettering, and I'll explain to you what those mean here in a minute. But in general, when you click on a property, I'm going to pick on 109 some more. Some of the things you can do when you identify a property. Zoom to, that's just if you zoom out by accident or something, you can click zoom to and it will zoom back into it. Clear is just going to clear it from being selected, just like you never clicked on it before. Buffer. Well, let's do joiners first. A lot of times when you have a subject property, or what I see happen quite often is a developer is working on a subdivision and he's got to send a letter to all of the adjoining property owners. You can select your subject property. Let's just say, let's pick this one since it's a little bit bigger. All right. And then you can hit the joiner button. And what that's going to do is automatically select every parcel that touches the boundary of that subject property. And you'll notice over here on the left, these are all the properties. And then what you can do is up here at options, you can export it to a CSV file, which just opens in Excel, and you can create a mailing list from there. So folks use that quite a bit. And like I say, it's just when you identify a subject piece of property, if for some reason you need to notify the adjoining property owners, you know, hey, we're getting ready to have this lot surveyed. Well, that's a quick way to get a list of all of the piece of properties that touch it. And you can either export it as a CSV, it's just going to download and then open in Excel, very basic. You know, you can format it, strip out the stuff you don't need, and build your mailing list. Or if you just need a quick, you just need to look at all the data really quick, you can tell it to show results in a table. And again, it's just going to give you a table. Now, this table, you can't really do nothing with other than just view it for what it is. But a lot of people, that's how they create mailing lists. Just one quick note as well. A lot of folks do these big queries. Currently, because of performance issues, you're only allowed to select 1,000 properties at a time. That may seem like a lot, but if you say, hey, I want a list of all of the property owners in Hampstead, well, guess what? You're only going to get the first 1,000. You're going to miss several more thousand. So just a note to self, you can't select more than 1,000 at a time. We did increase it to 5 or 2,500 one time and then 5, but the performance of the website was terrible. Hopefully with this new upgrade, you know, we can increase that. You know, a lot of folks want to come in and select all the parcels on Topsail Island. Well, there's well more than 1,000, so you can't do it currently. The last one on the identify tool is the buffer. What the buffer is you can set a bunch of parameters. Very useful tool. You can tell it 1,000 feet, you know, you can do 5280 for a mile. If I want to know within a mile, by default it's set to feet. I want to search through the parcels that the total value is between 325,000 or 350,000 and 375,000. That have a sale price of, you know, whatever, sale date from June of 2020 to September of 2020. That have a residential, you ain't got to input anything in here, except one field, but you can kind of drill it down as far as you need to. Once you have that information in there, again, you can only return 1,000 results. Hit search. So within a mile of this piece of property, 62 records met the criteria that I put into that buffer tool. So 62 of these have a tax value between $350,000 and $375,000. Any questions on that identify tool and these tools right here? Cool, very good. Again, buffer can be very, very useful. Again, you don't, as long as you input stuff, parcel ID, yeah, not so much, because most parcels only pertain to one parcel. But again, if you're just looking for comp sales, so to speak, you can, because this information, all of this tax information, the information you see on GIS is populated and managed by the tax office. I don't work for the tax office. I don't input data. I don't map parcels, even though I have in the past to help them out. Most of this stuff is populated from a parcel standpoint. When you identify a property, all of this stuff comes from the tax office. So anytime you have a question about parcel data, their parcel use codes, their sales price, anything like that, that's all populated at the tax office. And you can always reach out to them with those questions. But anyway, again, very useful tool, this buffer and adjoiners. You can make it just as specific as you want to. All right, moving on, since there were no questions. The next one I skipped over was this select tool. Again, I don't know how much it's used, but it's pretty self-explanatory as well. You can select features using different ways. So the first one's a point. So it's just like using your identify tool. You can click on it, it's selected. Line. Say you want to save a few minutes and you don't want to click on 20 different parcels in a straight line. Left click one time, drag a line, double click. Now all of those are selected. Again, they're selected over here the same way as when we used the buffer tool. Polygon just means you can draw a random shape and select them that way. Say you need part of this, and then you need to jump over here and grab one, and then you need to come over here and grab these. Double click the end, and that'll select everything that was inside or touching that polygon you drew. Extent is really probably a bad word there. It just means draw a square. And that will select everything. I prefer to use the buffer, actually have some specific information versus just drawing a big square, because it may grab some stuff you don't want it to grab. Also, if you're doing a line and you end it, you double click it and you're like, man, I didn't mean to do that. Well, if you go to draw another one, it's going to clear all these. But what you can do, you can click on this add to current extent. Just change this to whatever, and then click on another one, and you'll see it's allowing me to add it to that previous selection. Because if this wasn't checked, again, it would delete everything you highlighted. So that's our select parcels. Any questions on that one? Let's see, I think that was the only two I skipped. XY measure. Oh, draw. So draw, this is a fairly new feature. It is a little finicky. I mean, I guess some folks use it. We did have some folks request being able to draw stuff on the map. Pretty self-explanatory on some of it. We'll just go through them real quick. Text. You can choose a color text. Bold, italic, you know, there ain't a lot of options there, but if you need to make a map really quick for a presentation, you can do it. Once you pick a color, you can click on the map and it'll ask you what kind of text. Click OK. As you can see right there, it is. I didn't pick the best color for it to be to show up, but you can add a point. You know, if going back to that example where someone's wanting to know how far I am from a school, you know, you can draw a line with a point on it, you know, and then you can put text above it that says 1.5 miles. So here again, I'm just going to pick a point. You know, you can make it pretty. You can add points to the map, different colors, different sizes. You can, same thing with lines. You can change the color of the line, the width of the line. You know, double click. Again, that's really where I could see something like this being used. Not necessarily for a title, because you can add a title when you go to print it or go to save it. But still, if you need to put lot such and such, you know, something with sales price or something like that on, or some little write-up from your agency or something like that, you could always use that versus having to save it, then open it with Adobe or something like that, and edit it that way, or something in Paint. You can do some of that right here in GIS.
Hey, Josh, real quick, can you show us how you got there from the main screen?
What, to the draw?
Yeah, just real quick where it was.
So all I did, let's see, what is it? All right. So you can do it anywhere in the county. You can do it full extent. You know, you can do it when you're zoomed down in on a parcel. All I did was click on this little pencil right here, and it's going to open the draw toolbar over here on the left. And from there, just depending on what you want to do, like I say, if you want to add text, you want to add a point, if you want to add a line, if let's say this is your piece of property right here, or one that you're trying to sell. And I want to draw, you know, a building on it. You know, the polygon, you'll see it kind of auto-complete every time you click a point. That's what a polygon is. And then you can double click it. You know, you can change the color. It can be just an outline. If you want to indicate, you know, where there's sewage drain area, or this is where a proposed 20 by 40 building is, or something along that lines. You know, you can draw it with this on the map. And when you click print, anything you draw, any text you put up there, symbols, if you put a star or X or a line, all of that stuff is going to show up on the map. I'll show you right here when it pops up. So right there's a polygon. So like I say, a lot of folks do like a vicinity map, like they'll have a subject property that's highlighted, they'll put a dot on the house, then they'll draw a line over to a school and put like a star on it, or an X marks the spot, so to speak. And then over top of the line, they'll put, using text, they'll put 2.3 miles or something as the crow flies. That's mostly what they use it for. But again, that's just this toolbar up here, and you can toggle it on and off. And then you can just hit clear to get rid of it. But that's how you get to it. Any questions on that draw toolbar? It is a little finicky, especially if you have a sensitive mouse like mine. You know, your mouse has got to be perfectly still, and even still, sometimes it ain't always 100% receptive, but by and large, you know, it works pretty good.
A couple questions in the chat real quick. Someone asked if there was a way to toggle on and off like fire hydrant locations.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and we'll go over that in the next part in the table of contents.
Okay, perfect. And then real quick, does the plat reference pull the plat up directly?
Yes, very good question. So I didn't show you that, which is one of our newest updates. So going back to this identify tool and hyperlinks, again, the only two layers that are going to have hyperlinks are the parcels and the address points. But the ones for the address point is the same as if you identify a parcel. So when you identify a parcel, you'll notice that 4 of these records or 4 of the fields have blue letters. And what they represent are hyperlinks. If you click on it, when you identify a property, it's going to take you somewhere aside from our GIS website. So I'm just going to pick one down in here. So the first one is PIN. Now, unfortunately, we don't have every property record card, up-to-date property record card for 53,000, 51,000, however many parcels we do have. So all of this, again, comes from the tax office. Just because you can't access it in GIS doesn't mean there's not a property record card. There's a property record card for it. You may just have to call the tax assessor's office. If there is one, then when you click on that, again, make sure your pop-up blockers are turned off. Because again, none of, almost everything I've shown you, none of it's going to work if your pop-up blockers are turned on. So for this one, I clicked on the PIN hyperlink, and right here is a tax card that has the information you need. Now, keep in mind, what a lot of folks don't understand is how the tax office works. The owner as of January 1 for tax purposes remains the owner in their current year system until December 31st. So if it's January 2nd and I sell my property to somebody, when you pull up that property record card the following June, it's probably still going to have my name on, because in the tax world, it doesn't change names until December 31st. It can be very, very confusing, to say the least. But again, anytime you have questions, ownership questions, tax card questions, feel free to reach out to the tax assessor's office. Again, I don't work for them. You know, I don't input their data, that sort of stuff. It's all managed by them. We just access their tax cards via this hyperlink up here. There are a lot of cases where tax cards are not available. So when you click on PIN, you're probably going to get, I probably won't be able to find one now, you're probably going to get a 404 era or something along that lines, you know, that might make you think that something's wrong. That doesn't mean something's wrong. That means in the folder where we pull tax cards from, for whatever reason, there's not a tax card in there associated with that PIN number. Like right there. It pulled up a document, but it's blank. Well, in the folder where all the property cards live that GIS can access, there's not one in there for that property. So you may see a blank page or you may see a 404 error. Again, in those instances, if you had to have a property record card, until they have a public facing portal, which will hopefully be next budget year, you have to call them, unfortunately, to get a copy of it. They can email it, fax it, you know, whatever you need them to. But anyway, I'm happy just to have it back up there, you know, because we went about when they changed over software back in 2018 or 2019, I believe it broke our old process and we had no way to access it anymore. And I literally fielded thousands of phone calls over 2-3 years regarding property record cards. So at least, again, not all of them up there, but thankfully the majority of them are. But there may be some pockets throughout the county where for whatever reason, they don't have a property record card. See, like some of these out here, they're all blank. So you'd have to call the tax assessor's office to get them. And that's one of the main reasons, because of all of the phone calls I was getting, why I put this note down here. If you have questions, please call the tax assessor's office. You know, they're the ones that can provide that information. Not that I don't mind helping people. I love helping people. I love talking to people. I don't mind helping anybody for anything. But like I say, it just got to be where I was taking so many calls. Folks want property record cards. People want property record cards, and I couldn't give it to them. So,
Hey, Josh, can I ask a quick question?
yes.
So along with that, is that site gonna be kind of roll under the Pender port? Is that what?
Probably so, because all of it's done by Tyler Technologies. And the tax office, even though there's a big difference in software. It's just another software, another company that Tyler brought out, and now it's all packaged through Tyler. But they went live with it internally, but for whatever reason, they didn't include the public portal. I don't know that it would actually be within like what planning and inspections that portal uses. It would likely be through the tax office. The tax office would have a website where you could pay your bill. You could look at your tax bill. You could look at your historical billing. You could print you could actually see all of the property record cards. Whereas right now, GIS, we have this back end script that runs that allows us to link to these property record cards that are offloaded into another folder. It's a long story. But anyway, it'll likely be a separate tax website. I doubt it's going to be in the same, because even though they're both of the software, the owner is Tyler Technology, it's really a whole separate world within Tyler. So I doubt it's wrapped up in that customer portal, but who knows? It may be. The commissioners have to approve the funding to have it before we can even begin to have the discussion. But Pender right now is one of the only counties in the state that you cannot get tax information offline.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like what you find in GIS. This is very basic. You can't see a sketch of the house. You can't see how many bathrooms there are. You can't see, just endless attributes that the tax office keeps up with, and a lot of folks rely on for doing the job. And I've been pretty vocal about how displeased I was that this wasn't considered, because it should have been done from the get-go. Instead, GIS has had to come up with these custom back-end solutions to get this information to folks. So regardless, it's still in the budget. So hopefully 2021, 2022, we'll have that feature, and a lot of these problems will go away.
Do you think that's also going to include being able to actually pull up like COs and stuff? That's my big one.
Right. Well, that's more so wrapped up into the planning, the permitting, the inspections, and that stuff. I would think so. I will say I've not really had a big part in all of that process, but we went live with Intergov 3 years ago. It took us almost 2 years to even go live. It was a disaster. And it's been, something revolving, changing, updates, constantly stuff not working, on both sides of the spectrum, on the county side as well as the Tyler side. I would think so, but again, I don't really deal with that stuff very much anymore, thank goodness. But hopefully so. I know one of the upper management, the executive team on the county, they're wanting to enable the public to do as much as possible from the home. They're wanting to be very transparent. They want you to know, where is it held up in the process? Why did something get denied? Why do we have to go back out and have another inspection fee? They're trying to provide that information in a way that they've never done before, but getting to that point's a different story. So, any other questions? All right, just moving down the same identify tool, property address. If you click on that, if there's a picture available for the structure, it's going to pop up in a new window. So let me find something that's probably got a picture. There you go. So typically I show you what dates the pictures were taken, but if there's a picture associated with the property, that's what that hyperlink does. I will say, again, this was an old custom way that pictures used to be added to address point. Well, once we went live with Tyler products, the pictures are no longer being uploaded with the address points like they used to, because they're stored in the Tyler products. Well, guess what? Tyler currently doesn't allow us to access it. So newer stuff, say Windwater, the new phases of Windwater, or Salters Haven down in Hampstead. You know, any new pictures down there, you're not going to see on the GIS website, unfortunately. But that's something in the future we're going to work at getting back, because there's a lot of folks that like being able to see, you know, what the house and the structure actually looks like. But that's what that hyperlink does. The next two, deed reference and plat reference. This used to be a custom workaround that we had. I worked with our GIS vendor last year and finally got it updated after we moved the courthouse computer system. And now if you click on it, it's going to take you directly to the Register of Deeds website. If the tax office has the correct deed reference in here, it's going to take you to the right deed. But that's not perfect. They do make mistakes. There's ladies over at the tax office punching in manually these deed book and plat book numbers. So just don't take it that just because you click on it, that's the right deed reference. You still need to, you know, some due diligence, making sure you've got the right plat reference. If you see the words no plat, that means, that doesn't necessarily mean there's not a plat for it. It just means the tax office has no record. So if you click on it, it's just going to tell you, we're sorry, there was no plat found for that parcel. If there is a plat, like this one, same thing. It's going to take you directly to the Register of Deeds and to that plat. But again, there is a chance for some data entry error. So just make sure when you pull it up, you don't want to pull it up here, download it, and attach it to an email without zooming in and actually making sure it's the correct map. And that's all of our hyperlinks there. Any questions on those hyperlinks? Again, if you get those error messages, most likely it's just because a property record card is not available, or a picture's not available, a plat's not available. It doesn't mean the website's broken or your computer's broken. It's just right now there's not one available for that record. And there's plenty that don't have that information available. But if you want it, just call that number back here, 259-1221. They've got a lot of ladies over there to answer the phone, and they'd be happy to email you one or fax you one. Any questions before I move over to the table of contents? All right. So there's quite a few things you can do over here. Some are in the identify tool, but there's also an additional search. This is just a quick way here for announcements. A lot of times I'll put stuff here like when the property record cards went live, new orthos. I'm just going to hit Control F5, refresh the cache and stuff. This disclaimer that pops up, we'll usually put a notification there. When we get ready to do our updates and stuff like here, we'll typically, on the county side of things, as well on GIS, we'll typically put a note, hey, on March such and such, there's going to be updates. Website might be down from 5 to 7 p.m. or something along that lines. It's the same disclaimer. You know, you have to accept or decline. Again, you can't use GIS for legal matters. You can't sue someone, take them to court and say, look at what GIS has. I mean, you can, but it's not going to get you anywhere. You will waste a lot. But anyway, our basic search window, that's what all this is. Owner name, it gives you examples for all of them. Autocomplete is turned on most of them. So if I type in Smith space, anything that has Smith in it's going to bring in, but as you start typing a name, you can finish typing it out if you want, but most time I see who I'm looking for, and you just left click on it. It's going to zoom to it, automatically highlights it. You know, those same options are available once that happens. Parcel number, same thing. They give you a number over at the tax office. It'll autocomplete as you type stuff, unless there's not one. And in that case, it'll stop typing and you know you got a problem. Search by address, deed reference, and then cemeteries. Again, cemeteries, we added the points on by default. We added the search menu on the first thing you see, just to help the library folks out and all the people that search for cemeteries. We're probably going to be making some changes in the future where when you identify, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the recent news stories on cemeteries in Hampstead being destroyed by developers. But we'll probably have something in place in the future where when you identify a property, just like voluntary ag districts, if you identify a property and you're within, say, 100 feet of a cemetery, it'll pop up, or the piece of property you selected has a cemetery on it, it'll pop up like a warning, hey, there's a cemetery on this property. Just like if you select a piece of property that you're interested in buying, if it's within 3 miles of a farm, let's say a hog farm, chicken farm, turkey farm, or something like that, it pop up, hey, you're within such and such a, voluntary ag district, something along those lines. So we'll probably do something like that in the future to address some other concerns. Any questions about those main search options? All right. The next one is other, pretty much the same thing here. You can search for a specific address, you can search for a specific road name, or you can search for a specific subdivision name. And again, autocomplete. I like to click on Windwater, but here's Windwater. Again, you can just click on it and it'll zoom to it. There's several polygons, different phases of Windwater, so that's why you're seeing 6 records. Moving down to advanced, I will say bookmark's pretty useless. I'm actually going to take it off until we actually come up with bookmarks. It was just added from the get-go. Right now, it's just on township, and if you click on Topsail Township, it just zooms you to a certain extent, but it doesn't actually show you the boundary of Topsail Township, so it's pretty useless. But either way, there it is. Now, what you can use, and this goes back to that buffer tool that we talked about earlier. This is the same thing here, this advanced search. The first part here is pretty important. Like if you're zoomed down to this subdivision right here. If I go in here and I type, and I've got nothing selected, and I go in here and say, I want to see everything that has a value between 100,000 and 300,000. Well, it's going to pull 1,000 records. It's going to zoom out to the whole county. It's going to look through all of the county's information. But what you want to do is click this button up here that says filter results by current extent. All it's going to look at is what you see on your screen. That's your extent. So if I do it now, all it's going to select are the parcels within here that match those criteria. But again, just like the buffer, you can be as specific as you want to. The value between a certain value, the acreage, 1 acre to 1.5 acres, sale price 300 to 350 with a sale date from June 2020 to September 2020. Click search, and that's going to pull every tax record that meets that criteria. A lot of people just want to do it for sales. I want to see everything that sold the last 6 months. Just put in the dates, click search. It's going to pull the first 1,000 records. So it's better, the more specific you can be, the better off you're going to be. Because again, it's only going to pull 1,000. So the other, say 2,000, you don't really have no way to query that the other 2,000. Any questions on that advanced search? Again, it's just like the buffer tool. All right. The last one, it can be a little aggravating. Now, for simple queries, it's helpful, but complex queries, I use this all the time in the office, but now I use it on our desktop software and not the GIS website. But say you want to select every address point with a building type of regular home that is inside of Topsail Township. This right here, this query tool would allow you to do it, but I will say it can be very, very aggravating because you're pretty much doing a entry-level type of programming to get it done. So I'll just show you a basic query like we were talking about a while ago. Right here, you'll see that blue home, which stands for single wide trailer. If you look down here, just going back to that symbology, There's some apartments. I would imagine that's what that is. I think that's the symbology. Again, I haven't looked at this stuff in a long time. So yeah, multifamily. But anyway, if I was in a certain area and I wanted to see all of the address points that had a building type equal to, let's say, single wide trailer. Click OK. That's showing me, obviously, there's more than 1,000, so all we can see is 1,000. But that just selected all of the address points that have a building type of single wide trailer. Again, the more specific you can be, the better. But pretty much every layer in GIS, all of these layers right here. So if you want to select every, let's see, try and think of a good example. Every flood zone that is AE floodway, where we know it's going to flood. You can come up here to flood zones, choose field. Obviously, you kind of have to know what the fields mean. You can type in AE, click OK. Flood zone is probably not the best one because it is a big file. But either way, it's gonna select all of those polygons in the flood zone layer that have a type of AE. So again, it may not be something you use that much, but that's what the query tool is. You can just do custom queries. If you want to search for every road or every address point that has a building type abandoned, something along that lines, you can do that using that query tool. Any questions about the tools up here at the top? Search tool. Again, down here, you can build some compound queries, but it doesn't really give you examples of how to do that. And, we can do it in our desktop software. It's a lot easier to perform. It's just not something you probably use that often outside of just basic queries. I want to see every polygon that has a mixed use zoning class. If you used a query tool, that's how you could pull it. All right, if there are no questions about that, results is just that. Whenever you run a search or a query or anything like that, it's going to populate in the results window. And from there, that's where you can export the CSV file. Then you can just hit clear. The last one is layers. So the county, we have more layers than what's up here, but this is the majority of the layers that most jurisdictions have. Pretty much all of the layers we manage, and then some we download from the state. What you're seeing right now, going back to our original discussion, there are some layers that are on by default, but everything you see except for the base map can be turned off. And again, I'm just going to expand some of these so you can see them. And if you have questions about any of the layers in particular, let me know. But again, as you can see, anything that has blue on is already turned on. So the county line by default is turned on. Cemeteries is turned on by default. Now, a lot of folks don't understand why some of these things are grayed out. When you hover over them, there's this circle with the line through them, even though it's turned on. Well, what this means is it's only available at certain extents. We wouldn't want to be looking at the whole county and have all of the address points on, all of the parcels on. There's 50-some thousand parcels. There's 36,000 addresses. It would just jumble up and make the map look terrible. So if you see something grayed out, even if it's not turned on, if you see this little square right here grayed out, it means you're zoomed out too far. Once we start zooming in, like the cemeteries, you'll notice it's still showing by default. But when I zoom in, municipal boundaries is no longer grayed out. It was turned on by default, but you couldn't see it. But now you can turn it on and off. Any of these layers you can turn on and off. Parcels. We're still zoomed out too far, even though it's turned on. But as you get closer, there we go. It cuts on, then you can toggle it on and off. And that's just a way to make your map look a little more neat and clean. Again, you wouldn't want to be out here at this scale and have, 20,000 parcels and 20,000 addresses on your map. You wouldn't really be able to tell where you were. But any of these layers can be toggled on and off at any time, except when they're not viewable. If you see that little symbol right there, that circle with the line through it, you can't toggle it on and off until you go in far enough where it's activated, and then you can turn it on and off. Any questions about the layers? Just remember that until we get the transparency issue fixed, if you punch in, I'm going to punch in mouse. I'm going to punch in just so you can see specifically what I'm talking about. If I punch in 805 South Walker Street, I zoom in, there's my property. Well, I want to see the aerial photography, and I click photography. Guess what? Photography is not working. What's going on? They pick up the phone, they call. Well, what it is, going back to these layers that are on by default, the municipal boundaries layer and ETJ layers on. So once you turn them off, you can see them. And once we get the transparency issue fixed, you'll be able to see through it, and you'll know that there's something else on top of it. But either way, just a quick note to yourself if you think something's wrong with the orthophotography. I think that's it. Any questions about the layers? Any questions about anything, fire away. Any suggestions, recommendations, things you like to see? Focused websites, going back to what we talked about before, something you're probably going to see more of, just because folks want to go to a particular website that only has exactly what they need on it. They don't want to have to search through 50 layers. They want to know, is my house going to flood? So we're creating one that's specifically for flood zone, that you'll type in your address and it'll pop up what flood zone you're in, or if you're in a flood zone. Any questions on any of this other stuff or anything you would like to see?
Real quick, on the layers, is that where you would find the fire hydrants from the question earlier?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It's under public safety.
Okay, perfect.
So there, I can't remember what the topology is, but you have fire districts and then you have fire hydrants. So, okay, the little red triangles right here. So if someone wanted to know, their proximity to fire hydrants or something like that in the neighborhood, what kind of coverage do I have? Something that's not up there that we may include later, it's just never really been requested. I don't know if they wanted it up there, is our ISO districts. Very important for new homeowners, knowing the proximity to fire stations, what their insurance rates are going to be and that sort of stuff, because there's a big difference between a 5 and a 10 when it comes to your ISO rating. So that information is not online yet, but we do have it in-house. But again, it's under public safety, but those red triangles represent fire hydrants.
Perfect. And then you've got one other question, which actually, Irina, do you want to chime in here and ask your question? I'm not sure exactly what you mean.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yeah, we can hear
great.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, I come across the different categories of is it DCM wetlands versus NWI?
Yes.
And regardless which one would be shown on some of the parcels, it doesn't tell us if it's a kind of wetland that could possibly be altered, or how do we know? Is it just by survey really hands-on to know what kind of wetlands we're talking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as the wetlands is concerned, this is data that is managed, populated, and governed by the state. So as with anything, again, you can click on it to identify, to find what the wetland name is. I don't know about you, but all of this stuff doesn't mean anything to me. I have no idea what this information means. But we're not required, but it is requested for us to provide this information on our GIS website. We use it in some internal planning programs and that sort of stuff. But as far as the regulations, what you can do in a salt brackish marsh or swamp forest, you know, again, that's all really governed by the state. Environmental health is generally some folks that know a little bit more about it on the county side, but ultimately this data comes straight from the state of North Carolina, DEQ, or I'm not sure what they're called these days, but we download it straight from them and make it available on our GIS website. As far as building codes and what you can build, where, that sort of stuff, I'm just not familiar with, and there ain't many county staff outside of environmental or soil and water that's really going to know the state requirements for those types of wetlands.
Can I jump in real quick on that?
Uh-huh.
So Irina, yeah, so like he said, these are state kind of given wetlands. What we usually, for our residential purposes, have to watch out for are the 404 wetlands. Those are Army Corps of Engineer federal wetlands. So they are separate, but just like on the Onslow County GIS, if you see that swamp forest, that is usually the closest indicator that you're going to want to look at a plat map that has them marked, a survey that has them marked, or something like that. It's usually the term swamp forest that is most closely related to those 404 wetlands, although it's not an exact match.
Okay, Amy, thank you. And is there actually a search for 404 wetlands, or how do I see if it is that kind?
Yeah, so just like anything, going back to that query tool now, the four, I'm just not familiar with it. Again, it's not data I manage, so I don't even know what 404 stands for. But if swamp forest is something you want to look out for, if you go to the query tool, we'll go to NWI wetlands. We're gonna say what was it, description, and we'll type in swamp forest. Click OK. No records found. I probably typed it in wrong.
Okay, but you have to go to NWI first. Okay.
Oh, wetland name. That's what I was doing wrong. Yes, because that's the layer that I want to query is. But that goes with anything. If it's a flood zone, if it's a zoning district, if it's land use, future land use, anything, you have to tell it what layer you want to query. So now that I know what it is, it's this NWI name. Now when I type it in, it should work.
Is it typically case sensitive when you do searches like that?
It shouldn't be. Let's see. Let me click on it one more time. Wet name. Wet name. See, I don't even see that in the maybe I'm looking at DCM. Maybe that's what I'm looking at.
And Irina, to answer your question a little bit
There we
more,
go.
I don't think there is a specific layer for 404 wetlands in this GIS or ours. What Amy was saying was when you look at the wetland layers and you do see one that says that swamp forest, that's kind of your flag to go look further and look somewhere else on the plat maps, if it's marked on the plat maps, on a survey, if you can find one or get one. But that swamp forest is usually your red flag that there may be some more investigating that you need to do.
Right.
Okay,
So
don't really turn away right away just because it says NWI or DCM.
right.
Okay.
this is gonna have all of them on it, but what I just did, I was searching under NWI, and what we were looking at was actually DCM, so that's why I was getting the no records found. But as you can see, that's a pretty popular wetland type, because I reached the max of 1,000 county. But that's what this information is here. But again, just running this query tool, if there was another DCM or another NWI wetland name you were looking for or trying to avoid, right here is how you would search it.
Got it.
But
Thank you so
it's dumb. I mean, you really have to tell it everything you need it to search for it to work. And it shouldn't be case sensitive, or if you only know partial names, like, the road begins with Mallard, but I don't know if it's Roost or Bay or whatever. You can change this equals to like, and it'll pull back features that have part of the name associated with it. I forgot to mention that earlier.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Desiree, I think you had mentioned that you had a question, if you want to chime in here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my computer or my internet browser being slow, but I was under the impression that when I'm using the site, let me just clear it again just to make sure. If I zoom in on the map just randomly and I click on a parcel, that the details would pull up on the left side under the search results or the results layer. But I get that once in a while and not all the time. I don't know if it's just my internet browser being slow.
I think that might be yours.
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, the website, like I said, for the most part, even I'm in the office, I'm on a fiber optic, network right now. I have issues from time to time. You think,
as I'm asking, it's working perfectly.
right? You think I'm crazy, but on days where the weather's bad outside, maybe it's because more people are online or whatever. It's terrible. There'll be all kinds of little quirks and stuff. It's just, I mean, it's IT. We see this stuff all the time. But by and large, you shouldn't have any issues like that. Again, where the problems can come in most of the time is with Internet Explorer, or you're using a shortcut, a shortcut that's been on your desktop for 3 years. There's nothing wrong with the shortcut, but when we push out data, when we update things, when we have a problem and have to go in and update this, update that, a lot of times there can be a transition period where your cookies, your history, your cache that's stored in log files and stuff on your machine, granted, you don't know where the problem is, but it still stores all that information in the background, and it can cause some performance issues. So again, most time, if it's acting crazy, if something ain't working, the first thing I do when I push out updates is I'll hit Control F5 at the same time. And that's a universal tool that you can use for any page, not just GIS. And it reloads your cache and stuff, but going in regularly and deleting your history, cookies, because all that stuff is just compiling data in the background and memory. And the more of that stuff you can free up, the better really any website's going to work. You ain't got to obviously delete your passwords and that stuff. It gives you an option to, just delete your history, your cookies, and that sort of stuff. But that's generally fixes 99% of the problems when people call if they're having. It's just clear your history, your cookies, your cache, either restart your browser or restart your computer altogether. And it's a healthy practice too, like my parents. They never shut their computers down. And they're always like, Josh, what's going on with my computer? Have you shut it down? Well, no, when was the last time you shut it down? I can't remember. They leave it up all the time. And really at least once a week or so, it's really, really good to shut your computer down. From an IT perspective, I'd be willing to say probably 30–40% of our work orders that come through, like our help desk, most of the problems are fixed with a simple restart. I mean, it's crazy how many problems it does fix. It doesn't fix all of them, but anyway, just note to self.
One more question in the chat. Wanda
Okay.
had asked, in new development such as Waterside in Surf City, when does that information populate? I'm assuming like when do the developments and the new lots and stuff populate?
Right, so that's what I was gonna ask, what type of information about Waterside are you talking about?
And Wanda, if I got that wrong, drop it in the chat or come off mute and let me know. But I'm assuming that's what you mean as far as like when new developments come in, when do
Right.
those lot info?
Right.
When does that, right? Yeah, that's basically it. I probably should have looked to see if maybe you already have it there.
Yeah,
But when would you,
it's there.
as the plot is, as the plat map is recorded and as the lots are sold, is that?
Right, so this is confusing for a lot of people, which it should be. Because you know what jurisdiction you go to, it's done different everywhere. From a parcel standpoint, actually mapping of the lots in a new subdivision such as Waterside, Pender County, as well as most counties across the state, are not going to map a subdivision until the final plat is recorded. Now, there are some counties that do it at preliminary, but they obviously got more time than we do. Because inevitably there's going to be revisions, there's going to be changes. Then we have to go back in, make the changes, assign new parcel numbers, because parcel numbers are based on the centroid of a parcel. So if you add 20 additional feet on the back, the front, the side, the number is going to change. There's multiple other reasons why you don't do it at preliminary. So the tax office is not going to map a new subdivision until the final plat's recorded. Now, just because Bill Clark Home records a new 50-lot subdivision today doesn't mean in GIS it's going to show up tomorrow. It's probably going to be 2 to 3 weeks, at a minimum before that information actually shows up in GIS. Legally, that subdivision has been recorded and is a legal subdivision. But the reality is we have one person, I think they're in the process of hiring a second person that maps parcels. She's just one person. She's responsible for all of the mapping in the county, whether it's a change, whether it's a new survey, whether it's Joe Blow's, split his 10 acres into, equal lots to give to his kids. She does all of that mapping. She does all of the subdivision mapping. So just because it's recorded in Register of Deeds, a lot of folks are like, well, then I should be able to have my parcel numbers and information tomorrow. Well, that's not how it works. That ain't how it works really anywhere in the state or across the country. But anyway, the parcel is really what drives addressing, and what drives permitting and inspections, because folks got to have that parcel number. From an addressing standpoint, once that subdivision like Waterside, the final plat was recorded, the tax office had it mapped, we're responsible for creating the roads, the ranges, and the addresses. So once they have it mapped, we go in using our custom addressing tools, not me specifically, I've done it years in the past, but Mike Dixon, our analyst from Surf City, that's on board with us now, he actually does it himself. He goes in, he creates the roads, populates all the information, creates all of the address points. Usually within a day or two that he's notified from the tax office that, hey, Waterside has been mapped. Usually within 1 to 2 days, it's available in GIS. And then everything just kind of flows down from there. Once folks have those PIN numbers, they can start the permitting process, that sort of stuff for new houses. There are some exceptions that the plan in the UDO allows, such as a piece of property. I think you're allowed to build up to 3 houses before it's technically subdivided, which causes some other problems from an addressing standpoint. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. As far as when that information is available in GIS, as far as actual tax owner, it just kind of varies. Because again, going back to one of my earlier comments at the beginning was, from a tax perspective, the owner as of January 1 is the owner until that December 31st. Legally, property has changed hand. It has a new owner well before then. But until the tax office pushes out changes that happened in 2020 for year 2021, that information ain't going to update in GIS. So they don't really have a set timeline of when they do it. I can't really give you an answer. I can't say, hey, we've got it mapped in 1 month. All of the new ownership information will be in GIS. I have no way of knowing when they push that information out. Technically, they don't have to push it out until January 1 of the next year. Most time it's available well before then, but it doesn't have to be until January 1 of the next year. So anytime you have a question about ownership, something just doesn't look right, you know a property was sold, but it's still showing the old owner, it's still showing the original purchase price or something along that line, just call that 1221 number. And they can provide you, because like right now it's March 31st of 2021. They're actually working from a tax perspective in year 2022. So the new records and stuff they're setting up right now from deeds and maps that have been recorded the last couple of months, they have that information in their tax system. So if you need a current for 2022 property record card that shows the new ownership information, they can provide it to you. It's just not available in GIS. Until they push it out, you know, which can be at any time, you know, it's just not going to show up in GIS.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I've got in the chat. So if anybody else has any questions and wants to come off mute real quick, go ahead and ask them.
Yep, and like I say, just that homepage. This is again mine and Mike's contact information. So call me at any time. I've been working remotely for about a year, but either way, my office phone was forwarded to my cell. So even if I'm not in the office, my number's typically forwarded to my work cell. So feel free to shoot me email, call. You know, if we need to do a quick go to meeting or something along that lines, you're just having problems or something like that, you just got additional questions, always feel free to reach out to me at any time. And if you can't get a hold of me, Mike, he's been here going on 2 years now. Even when he was in Surf City, he used our website all the time. So he's pretty familiar with our website as well. So as well as any of these other maps. And like I say, there'll be more to come there. When we do push out updates, there'll be a note or something up here that says, hey, on September of 2021, we're going to have a new website or something along. That's not what's going to happen, but I'm just saying, just all, that's the good thing about not necessarily always going to your shortcut, because you may miss a new update, or hey, the website's going to be down for 2 days for updates or something along that lines. So any other questions?
I think that's it. Josh, thank you so much for, you know, coming
No
on here
problem.
and teaching us some stuff. There's a lot of really great info in there. Guys, like he said, if y'all have any questions, his contact info is on their website. Reach out to him. This class is also being recorded, so if you missed anything, just give us a day or two to get it up and, you know, go back and rewatch. But thanks a lot, Josh.
All right, no problem. Thank y'all very much. Y'all have a good day.